through negotiations rather than through wars. And not only, it wasn't just words, but actually there were decisions made about destroying the weapons. And if that happens, there's so much more money available. What do we do with the money that's available? Well, the money will improve the economic situation of the country. We'll use that money to improve the economic situation of the country. So the Rebbe began the Sikha by saying that we're actually witnessing one of the prophecies about Mashiach is that when Mashiach will come, there won't be any more wars, and they will turn swords into plowshares. What does that mean? A sword is what's used for warfare. Plowshares are used, it's metal, but it's used to work in a field to produce food that people are going to be eating. So when we, a lot of things in the Torah are written in sort of a metaphoric language. When we see that there's a decision amongst the nations, the Rebbe will explain more details of this, a decision that all the nations are getting together and making a decision that we should no longer engage in war. And what are we going to do with the money? We'll use it for improving the economic situation of the country. This is what we're seeing is in front of our eyes, the beginning of this fulfillment of this happening, that the swords, which are the tools of warfare, will be destroyed, and instead we'll have more food and so on and so forth. I once heard somebody speaking, and he said an interesting thing. He said, Hashem doesn't speak to us, but he speaks to us in sign language. He does things in the world, and that's a way of telling us different things. But you have to understand sign language to be able to understand what he's saying. So the Rebbe is interpreting what we're seeing, what's going on. So we are on page 171, where it says Gimel. V'yesh lehoisef. Now to add, shaychusa shel ha'mu'ura las pulasa shel Mashiach. This connection, that what we see happening in the world, that it's not just an ordinary event, an ordinary occurrence, or something that's just a political change, but it's actually connected to Mashiach. Mudgeshes, it's also emphasized with Proti HaMa'ora. If we look into the details of this event, of this occurrence, we look into the place that it happened and the time that it happened, where this announcement came from all the heads of the countries, how this is connected to the Kitzur Chabesim Li'itim. This is connected to the prophecy of swords being transformed into plowshares. In other words, if we pay attention to the place that it happened, we pay attention to the time that it happened, we'll also see how it's connected to Mashiach. Hamokim, the place that it happened. Hamokim shebayira moira zeh, mokim yuchet sheboy meyutzagim bekviyus. This is the place that the representatives of all the countries in the world, it was in the United Nations, come together, and the purpose of whether people are using it or not is another story, but the purpose of this establishment is that all the nations of the world can come together and discuss things with each other in a pleasant way and in a peaceful way. Where is it? The Medina Zoo, Be'ir Zoo, it's in this country and in this city. Ha'ir sheba nimtza beis Rabbeinu sheba Bavel. Beis Chayenu. Beis HaKnesses, page 172. Beis Teira, Tfilo, Gmilas Chasadim, the Kvei Kedushas, Mervechami, Admen, Siderenu. This is the shul, this is the dwelling place of the Rabbi. The Rabbi always refers to the Frierdiker Rebbe. This is his place. Shebachabay, the Kavay, Lamokim, America, Shemenu takes a Torah. This became the center from here. From this place is a place which spreads the teaching of the Torah in general, and specifically the well springs of Chassidus, and spreads it b'chol katzvei table to all far ends of the world. Ad bias Mashiach tzidkenu, and this is the way it's going to be until Mashiach comes. Sheyafutzu meinesecha chutza. So this is connected to the famous saying that Bashamta was told, when will Mashiach come? When the well springs of Chassidus, the hidden secrets of Torah, will be revealed and they'll spread to the entire world. Sha'az Yagam Kima Yid v'kitzach habeisam leitim. And that's when we'll also see the fulfillment, the complete fulfillment of this prophecy that swords will be turned into plowshares. So it's going to explain more specific what that means. Now, there's something that it says in this Sikha, which is referred to a lot in the Rebbe Sikhas. And if you look here, the first few lines, these words are in bold. It says, Chatzi Kadra Tachton, which means the lower half of the globe. What does that mean? Let me first explain it, then we'll do the words inside. The Rebbe always explains that when the Frierdiker Rebbe was in Russia, and then we know the story that he was arrested by the communist regime, and then miraculously he was freed, but they freed him on the condition that he should no longer be living in Russia, and he left, and he went to Latvia. From Latvia, he went to Poland. From Poland, he went back to Latvia, and then eventually he came to America. So on the surface, it was a change of location because of circumstances. There was a war, there was a communist regime, then the World War II broke out, and he had no choice. He had to leave, and he came to a country where he can live freely as a Jew. But when the Frierdiker Rebbe came, he said, I didn't just come here because this is a good place to live, and you can live here in freedom, but I came here, and it's part of a mission. And the mission is to in those days, there was a phrase that Jews used to use in Yiddish. They would say, America, it's 3 words. America is anders, which means America is different. Doesn't sound very harmful, but it was pretty harmful. What the words meant was, we cannot observe Jewish observance in America like we did in the old country. And the saying was, like, when you're with the Romans, you do as the Romans do. When we lived in Europe, when we lived in Russia, when we lived in Poland. So that's where Jews observe Shabbos and Kashrus and Torah mitzvah. Now in America, you can't keep Shabbos, you'll never get a job. And you can't keep Kashrus, so hard to find places that you'll be able to get kosher products, all sorts of difficulties. So once you come to America, you can no longer live the same way you lived in the old country. So they would say America is anders. The Frierdiker Rebbe said that my mission is to come here and to make it clear that no, America is nicht anders. America is not different. And you can observe Torah and observe mitzvahs in America like in any other country. I once heard from someone who was actually the great-grandfather or the grandfather of Rabbi Hecht, Rabbi Hecht. Well, Rabbi Hecht, who some of you might know from the summer programs, it's his great-grandfather. He came to America in the early 1900s. And he said that he couldn't find a job. He was a young kid, but his mother was there by herself, and he had a supporter. He was like 12 years old. He went to work in a factory to make money. Come Shabbos, he couldn't go to work, so he stayed home. Comes Monday, so the owner says, where were you Saturday? The owner was Jewish, so he says, oh, I keep Shabbos. So he says, well, if you don't work on Shabbos, you don't work on Monday either. Goodbye. That was the end of his job. He went to another factory, the same thing happened. So the next time, when they asked him, why weren't you at Shabbos? He said, I had a headache, I didn't feel good. Okay. The next week, he had a stomach ache and didn't feel good. How many eggs can he keep having? And finally, they realized that he's keeping Shabbos, and again, he lost his job. This went on for a very long time, months. He went from job to job to job, until he came to a place where there was also a Jewish factory owner. And he felt bad for him. And he said, if you will come in on Sunday and catch up on the work that you missed on Shabbos, I'll open the business for you on Sunday and catch up to your work, and I'll let you work it. And that's what happened. The owner was very nice. He opened the door. He would put his head down and go to sleep, and he would work on the machines and catch up. I'm just giving you an example of how difficult it was. And that's why in those days in America, when they wanted to say that somebody's religious, they didn't say he's frum or religious. They would say he's Shomer Shabbos, because that was one of the hardest things to do. People felt if you keep Shabbos, you can't have a job. So it was important to come in and revolutionize this idea That's on a level that we can all just see with our eyes. On a deeper level, we know that the whole purpose of Torah mitzvahs is to elevate the physical world. So when Hashem gave the Torah to Har Sinai, this brought Torah light into the world and it elevated the world. It had an effect on the whole world. But nevertheless, the main effect was in that part of the world where the Torah was given and where people observed the Torah, which was not America. America wasn't even discovered in those days. So this is called Chatzi Kadar Tachtin, the lower half of the globe, the part of the globe that never really had Torah in it all these years since the Torah was given. And again, even though the Torah has an impact on the whole universe, but the further away, the less the impact. It's like saying we're sitting in this room and we're studying Torah. Does this have effect only on this room, or does that affect on the whole neighborhood, or perhaps on all of New York City, all America, the whole world?
Yeah.
So the answer is it has a ripple effect all over, but directly it affects the place where you are in the room that you're sitting in. Generally speaking, and like I said, a ripple effect, yes, it reaches the whole world, but that's in a much more subtle way. So it says like this: when the Friedrich Rebbe came to this lower part of this world, the Kava Mekayma b'Medina Irzu, and he settled here. Hischil b'Teike v'Naser Habira v'Zichru. This was the beginning. That's sort of the last part of the globe that hasn't been elevated until now should become elevated. Shegam by Nimshach Agilu the Matan Torah. That what was revealed at the time that the Torah was given, which was mainly in Chatzi Kadar Elyon, in the upper part of the globe. When we say upper and lower, we're talking in context of America, of where we are compared to where the Torah was given. That's called the upper part of the globe, and this is the lower part. Not only that now we have the light of Torah in this part also, but Adrabah, the reverse. Shanasa Hamoka, this actually became the source. Shamimenu, from here, Nimshach v'Nispashet Iker Hapula Dafotz Torah or Mayonos Chutz B'Chol Katz V'Tevel. From here, which is supposedly the lowest part of the globe, Dafka, this became the place that is spreading the light of Torah and the light of Chassidus to all parts of the globe. Adei Shluchim, through the Shluchim Sheshalach, that the Friedrich Rebbe sent. Again, everything the Rebbe does, he attributes to the Friedrich Rebbe. So the Friedrich Rebbe sent people to every part of the globe. Gam l'chatzi kadar elyon. In fact, that means there's other parts of the globe which are actually closer to where Yiddishkeit always was practiced, closer to Har Sinai, and those parts of the globe are benefiting from things that are happening here that was spreading Yiddishkeit from here there. Even the Mokim Apina China Nidachas Bailim, even to a remote place in the world. In the Lahafitz Torah v'Yadus being called Bnei Yisrael. First of all, this is to spread Yiddishkeit and Torah to all Yidden. Kailal ub'miyuchad, and specifically Yidden shedarim bein u'Yisrael, that live amongst non-Jewish nations. Medabrim b'Lashona, they speak their language, and outwardly they act just like them, and nevertheless we should reach those people and bring Yiddishkeit to them. Right? There's another thing, Gamza Iker. It's also a very major thing, and that is not just spreading Torah and mitzvahs to Yidden, but afatzas kolin yonei teiv v'tzedek v'yosher, spreading goodness and justice and honesty, gam bein umas ha'olam, amongst nations of the world, that they ki mitzvah b'nei noach. As it's been emphasized in the recent years. In the recent years, starting from 1983, the Rebbe came out with a campaign that we should reach out to the nations of the world, that they should observe their 7 mitzvahs. And this was something which was revolutionary. And when the Rebbe came out with it, there was a lot of raised eyebrows, like, since when are we have not already finished with every single Jewish family in the world, and now we're going to reach out to the non-Jews, and how could we reach out to the non-Jews? And there was a lot of controversy. What kind of campaign is this? But the Rebbe insisted Not that you have to go knocking on the doors, but the Rebbe spoke about any person that's interacting with somebody who's not Jewish, whether it's at work, or there's somebody who involved in political places, or working with different groups, or let's say different clergymen for whatever reason, and communal issues, and they have influence on people that are not Jewish, especially influential people that are not Jewish. Speak to them about the Shev Mitzvah Bnei Noach. And the Rebbe's explanation was that actually it's a commandment. In the Rambam, he writes that it's halacha. People say, "Come on, tell me a name of a person or a place in the past 2,000 years that anybody was involved in spreading the 7 mitzvahs to the non-Jews." It's unheard of. So why are we doing something new? And in general, there's always this fear about new movements and new things. If it's not deviating from Torah, this is something new. It was never done before. And the Rebbe said the answer is very simple. If you look in the Shulchan Aruch, the Code of Jewish Law, there's actually a commandment that Yidden are commanded to speak to people who are not Jewish about observing their 7 mitzvahs. So then why was it never done? And the answer is because for the last 2,000 years, it couldn't be done simply because it was dangerous. If a Jew would come to non-Jews and tell them that the Torah says you should conduct yourself this way or that way, this was something which would lead to a lot of issues, if not pogroms and killings and who knows what. The Jews were very happy and satisfied, and they were left alone and allowed to live as Jews in their ghettos. To go out to the non-Jews and tell them the Torah says you should be doing this, that, or something else was inconceivable because it was dangerous. But once the danger is off, then the obligation is applied. How do we know the danger is off? Because we see that. Today there are thousands of people that are going out there and observing the 7 laws, and not only there's no resentment and there's no hate, I'll get to you in a second, and there's no pogroms. On the contrary, they appreciate it. Yeah.
Well, I was asking, what happens when you're really nervous about speaking to somebody that like you're worried about the threat, like you're by yourself, like majority of the people in this room, like you're younger, like talking to somebody for the first time, like like you're worried that they're gonna, I don't know.
So it depends, how you say what you say, and if you don't feel that this person doesn't look to you like they're going to be able to relate to it, so you don't do that. But sometimes you see there's a person that's ready to hear what you have to say. They're carrying a conversation with you. Maybe they're curious about what you're doing, and then you can bring in and just. First of all, today you can just say, "Are you familiar with the 7 laws?" You might get a positive answer right away. Yeah, I heard about it. What is it? Why is it? And you just say that these are commandments for all mankind.
But then, like, how you explain the importance of them? Hashem created them, and I'm like, huh?
It depends. The fact is, this is the fact. You can't argue with the fact. The fact is that today, if you go on the internet, you'll see there are thousands of people that call themselves Bnei Noach, which means that they are following the Noahide laws. The only question is this person that kind of person or not? But there are people that are taking it in a positive way. Maybe we have to bring in someone who deals with it and tell you how he does it and the reaction. What?
That'd be so cool.
If I can find someone, it's just interesting to know. You can have the same question with the Jewish people also. Like you're talking to somebody who's totally secular. How can I talk to them about Shabbos, about Yiddishkeit? And then very often you find, wow, you're pleasantly surprised that they're like very excited to hear what you have to say. But the question is, why did it change? Okay, now we know there's a change in the world. People are more receptive. They're ready to hear about it. But why did it change? What happened that made the change?
Maybe it leveled the playing field because everybody became an immigrant here. There weren't really like established dynamics of power, like in Europe.
That's a psychological answer. We're looking for a spiritual answer. So the spiritual answer is we're getting closer to Mashiach. In other words, when Mashiach comes, that's what's going to happen. The whole world will recognize Hashem. They're not necessarily going to become Jewish, but they'll recognize Hashem, and they'll observe the Sheva mitzvahs. And therefore, as we're getting closer to Mashiach, we're beginning to see and feel it's like Shabbos. That Shabbos starts when you light candles, or when the sun goes down. But before Shabbos, there's already preparation. You start feeling even halacha. You don't say tachnun Friday afternoon after midday. People are getting dressed for Shabbos. They're washing up for Shabbos. They're preparing the food for Shabbos. The Shabbos atmosphere comes into the home before Shabbos. So the Mashiach, the winds of Mashiach are blowing before Mashiach actually comes. It's already blowing in the world. And then we're already feeling the effect of it. So what happens is the fact that today is a time that you can see. I mean, I know that there are people who, like I know Rabbi Y.Y. Jacobson, for example, he spoke to a few hundred clergymen from other religions about the Shev Mitzvah Noach, and they applauded him. And these are religious leaders of other religions. But the idea that everyone should believe in one God and everybody should observe these laws, which are all laws that will make the world a more stable place to live in, it makes perfect sense if you follow it. Yeah.
But then there's like in the time of Mashiach, that people who weren't Jewish, like for us, it would be that everyone would be on and we call them into and everything, and then so for non-Jews, they would all be 15 and 17.
Right.
Like that's like
That's where they will reach their perfection.
Because I've always heard the question like what happens to people who aren't Jewish, and so it would be that they have the same sense of like keeping everything they
Right.
try and keep it in a Jew.
Exactly. In other words, just like we will recognize that Hashem is, we're under His sovereignty and He's the creator of the universe, and we follow what He says. How do we follow? Keeping our mitzvahs. How do they follow? By keeping their mitzvahs. So as we're getting closer to the times of Mashiach, and this is also found in a prophecy, it says, Oz epech el amim sofa brura. Hashem says, there's a prophecy that at that time when Mashiach comes, all the nations of the world will speak in a clear language. Likra kulam b'shem Hashem. They will all call in the name of Hashem. And they'll all serve Hashem shoulder to shoulder. We and the nations of the world will serve Hashem together. We'll serve Hashem with our mitzvahs, and they'll serve Hashem with their mitzvahs. But Kufa Achreina, and very recently, Heichel Mishnas Nisim, starting from Tavshin Nun. This is another thing which I really forgot to do that I wanted to show you. It was an interesting thing that the year Tavshin Mem Beis in Hebrew, which is at 19, again, the Hebrew and the years and the English years only begin to be the same after January 1st. So right now it's Tavshin Pei Hey, which is 85. And in English, it's 24. But after January 1st, it'll be 25. So the year Tavshin Mem Beis, which was 1982, the Rebbe said, and he wrote somewhere, that Mem Beis is an acronym in Hebrew for the two words, Teishnas Bias Mashiach. It should be a year of the coming of Mashiach. And from that point on, every single year, the Rebbe wrote what would be the acronym of this year. So the next year was Gili Mashiach. Gimel stands for the revelation of Mashiach. Daled was Divrei Mashiach. Every year the Rebbe had something. Strange enough, one year the Rebbe skipped. That was the year with the Vav. Even though I could think of a lot of things, and everyone could think of a lot of things to start with a Vav that could be connected to Mashiach, but for whatever reason, that year the Rebbe did not put any acronym. Then when it came to Tavshin Nun, which was 1990, the Rebbe said it stands for Teishnas Nisim. That was the year that they broke down the Berlin Wall and things started to happen with communism and democracy spreading more in the world. So the Rebbe said, especially recently, starting from Shnas Nisim, which is the year of miracles, basically a few months before that year started, the Rebbe said next year is going to be a nun, and it stands for miracles. It'll be a year of miracles. And I think it was actually on Rosh Hashanah that the Berlin Wall came down. And then someone at that time showed me it was a front page of the Time magazine after so many different things happened with different countries who became more of a democracy. There was on the page of that magazine said a year of miracles. They weren't referring to Shnas Nisim, it was their own thing, but it was we saw things happening that haven't been happening in the last 70 years. So that was Tafshin Nun. The next year was Nun Aleph. Nun Aleph alludes to another pasuk which says, Neflois Arenu. Hashem says, I will show you wonders. Which means there's one way of referring to these miracles as, wow, Hashem is performing miracles. The other way is, no, it's more than just miracles. There's a pasuk, a verse in the Torah, it says, Mashiach will come. Just like when you went out of Egypt, you saw wonders. When Mashiach will come, you'll also see wonders. That's this pasuk, Neflois Arenu, which means not only are these things miraculous, but these miracles are part of the process of the miracles that are related to Mashiach's coming. And we're witnessing these things. So Higia Pula Zul see this idea that even the nations of the world are changing, reached sort of the highest point. The Pritzas Gvuliseo Shamadina Ahi, that the borders of, by the way, the Rabbi never said the word Russia. He used to say that country, the country out there. He wouldn't say the name of that country, Shebeshaita, that during previous times, Chorsal Digla, the banner that this country carried was a war against spreading Torah, against spreading Yiddishkeit, a war against believing in the creator of the universe. And that's why they arrested people that taught Torah. And whoever taught Torah in those days in Russia had to do it underground, and a lot of people lost their lives. And in the parenthesis it says that this is also why my father-in-law, the previous Rebbe, Lachri, was arrested. And then he had to leave that country because being there was dangerous, because they would not allow Jews to teach Torah and to teach especially children Torah. So this was going on for a period of 70 years. Afal became, even though the previous Rebbe was in jail and he almost lost his life and he was tortured as a result of that, for the rest of his life he was not healthy because of everything that happened there. Nevertheless, he continued to do and use his influence in other ways into that country through his shluchim, through his shluchim in Russia, by spreading Torah and spreading Yiddishkeit, b'chashoy, which means in an underground way, b'mesiras nefesh. As we know, the people who did it put their life on the line. Adlik kufa achrayna, this was going on for 70 years until recently, is batla gzeres hamalchus. All those their decrees that they had, that you're not allowed to study Torah, you're not allowed to teach Torah, it all became bottled, became canceled. And now you could study Torah there, you can spread Torah, you can spread Yiddishkeit, begoli in an open way, but pirsum with all publicity. There's nothing that's stopping you. It's completely allowed. And the previous regime, which is the communist regime, fell. And now there's a new government, and this new government, that they're not going to follow the communist regime, but it's going to be a government that's going to follow righteousness and peace. How you say that? Based on the belief in Hashem, where before there was war against Hashem, even though now Russia is very involved in a crazy war with Ukraine. But at that time, this was a revolutionary change that took place in Russia. And the Rebbe is saying that change is also part of the process of Mashiach coming. That the nations of the world will realize that fighting and wars and fighting Yiddishkeit is the wrong thing, and to live a life of peace and let other people live and to deal with things in a way of just, not in a way of brutal force, to force people to do what I want. And that's all connected to the fact that Mashiach is sort of on the way, and that's why we're seeing these changes. ובהמשך לזה, actually it was this time of the year. It was actually January where they announced that the communist regime is over. Remember I told you the other day, the headlines in the newspaper was the party is over. That was, I think it was January 1st. And I remember that they had Olympics and they didn't know what national anthem to play because it's no longer a country. Big dilemma. Never. Okay. So in continuation to these changes that are taking place in the world, in continuation to the fact that the communist regime ended, and now there are these changes, this Erev Shabbos, when the Rebbe was speaking, that Friday there was this meeting in the United Nations between the leaders of different countries, specifically the new leader of that country, which was Gorbachev at that time, and the leader of this country, which was President Bush, the first Bush, with the participation of other leaders in the world, that they accepted this decision, that they should, that really what they made a decision, they didn't use the words of the Tanakh, but really it's what it says in the prophecy, that swords will be turned into plowshares. So this is the thing, when you see something like this happening, generally speaking, people say all the time there are political changes taking place in the world. Now this is another political change. But when you look at things from a Torah perspective, we realize that if there's a change especially in a country, and especially a change in a country that affects millions of people, then it means that something changed in the world spiritually. And as a result of something that changed spiritually, that's why something changed with the way the country is run and the way the countries are doing things. So the Rebbe is saying that all these changes are a result of the fact that we're getting closer to Mashiach. Now, what made that change? That's a result of, as we know, that spreading Hasidus, because it's the inner and deeper dimension of Torah. So therefore, this reveals the deeper and inner dimension of the creation, which is Hashem's presence. Torah and Hashem are connected. And whatever happens with Torah happens with the counterpart of Torah, which is Hashem. And when the inner and deeper part of Torah, which was never known before and never revealed before, starts becoming revealed, it brings the same result with Hashem himself. That the inner dimension of Hashem, which was never revealed before, and that will only be revealed once Mashiach comes, but through revealing the inner dimension of Torah, the inner dimension of Hashem becomes revealed. Well, the Rebbe is saying that this is evident by the fact that if you look at the place where all this happened, where did it take place? In the city of Nasidarenu, where Kedushas Merchami Admur. That's Shabanas Kapzu Manhigi Amadinas. That's where all the leaders of different countries gathered together. Kailo Gam Manig Madinazu, also the leader of this country of America, that even though his place is in the capital, which is Washington, Tzarech Lovei Mir Habir came from the capital to this city to be part of this gathering, of this meeting of heads of countries. Merumas, this is something which alludes to the fact that this is a result of all the activity of spreading Torah and spreading Yiddishkeit, spreading tzedek v'yesher, spreading righteousness and goodness b'chol ha'olam in the whole world. Shenasa v'nasa ma'adei Masih Dareinu Mashiach Shebedeir v'al yidei shleimus aveidu b'chol ha'niskar leil. But by doing these things, the more Torah that spread, and the more Yiddishkeit that spread, and the more Chassidus that spread, makes the world more ready to be able to absorb and contain and receive the light of Mashiach into it. And the light of Mashiach is when you see a change in the nations of the world, and you see a change in the governments of the world. Already, the general idea, the fact that according one of the big differences between the world we live in today and the world that used to be, was we live in a world today that in most of the civilized world that we live in, or in all civilized countries, legally, Jews have all the rights like everybody else. And we can do everything that anybody else can do. And there's no such country that says you're not allowed to teach Torah. I mean, not many of the civilized countries, not in a country like the Arab countries or whatever. So this means that this is all the result. The more we can't follow it and see, oh, you do this and you see that. But the more Torah is spread and the more Hasidus is spread, and the more it spreads out into the world, the more the world becomes ready for this spiritual change that's supposed to take place. I guess once Mashiach comes, probably each and every one of us will be able to see and recognize that what I did added more to tipping the scale and bringing Mashiach. Because the truth is, nothing goes unnoticed by Hashem. It means every word of Torah that I do, every mitzvah that I do, every good deed that I do, every act of helping another person is something which brings more light into the world. And more light there is, the more darkness gets out of the way. And therefore, even though there's all sorts of technical reasons why this all happened in New York City, but they're ever saying, being that this is a place where this became, in the recent years, the source, the headquarters from where Torah and Hasidus is being spread to the whole world, that's why, that explains why this took place in that city, because this is a result of that. The change in the way countries look at things is a result of the way we do mitzvahs. Sorry. Okay, there's a few more things here that we'd like to point out. I guess we'll leave this for next time. Some interesting things that the Rabbi points out about United Nations and so on and so forth. Okay, we'll stop here. Page 173. Okay. Yeah.
למה היה הרבי רצון שאני...
This clock is wrong? No, okay. מה?
למה הרבי היה רצון שאמריקה תהיה יותר יהודית? כאילו, למה דווקא אמריקה? היא משפיעה על כל העולם? כאילו, כי יש לה כוח, כאילו?
כן.
לאיזה רבי זה?
רוב יהודים גרו באמריקה.
הרבה יהודים גרו באמריקה? כבר מזמן, כאילו? איזה רב זה היה? איזה רבי זה היה? זה לא היה רבי מלובביץ'.
כן, הרייץ.
רייץ? אוקיי. כאילו, הוא גם נקרא רבי מלובביץ'? כולם נקראים רבי? אני לא מבינה את זה. לא, יש...
זה העיר שחב"ד היו.
באוקראינה? ברוסיה?
רוסיה לבנה, אני חושב.
אבל הרבי מלובביץ' זה הרבי האחרון, הרבי שאנחנו מכירים. שאנחנו מכירים את כולם, אבל כאילו האחרון.
אומרים, הרבי הראשון,